Good morning and welcome to our Saturday celebration service here at College Church Online. Whether you're a regular watcher or a first-time guest, we are thrilled that you've decided to join us this morning. My name is Colin and our main service will begin in just a few minutes, so get ready. If you haven't already, let us know where you're tuning in from today. We would love to hear from you. Just drop us a message in the live chat or leave a comment on this video. Our First Impression team are online right now, ready to engage with you and serve you in any way possible. So why not say hello? While you're there, if you have any prayer requests, let us know there as well. But if you don't feel comfortable sharing those in public, it's completely understandable. Just go to collegechurch.info and click on prayer requests and let us know that way, and one of the pastoral team will reach out to you. With all that being said, we will begin in a few minutes, so grab a drink, grab a snack, maybe send the worship service link to a friend or family member. Hey, we'll be on real soon, so get ready to worship with us. Good morning, my name is Colin and welcome to College Church Online. You've joined us on a good day. We're going to worship our God together through music, through prayer, through giving, and through a word from Pastor Brock. Pastor Brock will be preaching the second part of our series entitled, What Now? Pastor Alex launched this series last week, and the purpose of this series is to help us navigate through the what now moment we currently find ourselves in. You see, the government is beginning to ease some restrictions, and at some point in the not too distant future, we'll be able to meet back together and worship in the one building. As this day approaches, we're forced to ask the question, what now? What next? What is church going to look like post-COVID? How will we structure our Saturday mornings based on what we've learned during lockdown? This series will help us respond to this what now moment by exploring some of those moments in the Bible, so get excited. But for now, whether you're tuning in from the lounge or whether you're still in bed, we hope you're comfortable, but more importantly, ready and expectant of what God might do in this space. So join us now as we worship together.
Good morning, church. Now, I don't know about you, but this couple of weeks, every Saturday, I find that my family, we tend to get engaged in what's happening on the screen, but we forget to get involved and we forget to sing. We have to make ourselves sing. So I don't know if that's happening in your household or if it's just mine, but I thought, just in case it is happening in your houses, I want you to just move, change position, shift, and lean in. Because we're about to worship. And I know that you're not in this building, but we are worshiping this morning. So stand up, move around, let's sing. Ready? Arise, my soul, remember this. He took my sin and he buried it. No longer I who live, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light.
I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemy. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. to this place in my life. I'm full, but I'm not satisfied. This longing to have more of you. And I can feel it, my heart is convinced. I'm thirsty, my soul can't be quenched. You already know this, but still, come do whatever you want to. I'm standing knee deep, but I'm not where I've never been. I feel you coming, and I hear a voice on the wind. Would you come and tear down the boxes that I have tried to put you in? Let love come, teach me who you are again. Would you take me back to the place where my heart was only about you, and all I wanted was just to be with you? Come do whatever you want to. And further, my heart moves away from the shore. Whatever it looks like, whatever may come, I am yours. And further, my heart moves away from the shore. Whatever it looks like, whatever may come, I am yours. Then you crash over me. I've lost control, but I'm free. I'm going under. I'm in over my head. And you crash over me. And that's where you want me to be. I'm going under. I'm in over my head. And whether I sink or whether I swim, oh, it makes no difference when I'm beautifully in over my head. And whether I sink or whether I swim, oh, it makes no difference when I'm beautifully in over my head. I'm beautifully in over my head. Beautifully in over my head.
Thank you, Pastor Mickey and Charlotte, for sharing your musical gifts with us. Hey, we have just a few announcements for you. As mentioned earlier, the government is beginning to ease up on COVID restrictions. However, they are not at a stage where College Church is able to safely gather together for worship just yet. Our pastoral team and our leadership team are working really hard to determine how and when we are able to get back together again. But for now, we will continue to hold our worship services online only. They are also working really hard to determine what parameters must be put around Sabbath school and life groups so they're able to start meeting again. If you want to keep updated on all things regarding the opening of church, you can go to collegechurch.info and click on the orange tab entitled Latest News. On that tab, you'll also find other news relating to College Church. Okay, so also mentioned earlier was how we are currently finding ourselves in a what now moment. And as a church, we're trying to determine what church is going to look like post-COVID. We're trying to figure out how we will structure our Saturday mornings based on what we've learned during lockdown. But our pastoral team wants to hear from you. They want you to lead in this process. So recently a survey was sent out and a whole bunch of really great responses were received, which have given the team a starting point for discussions moving forward. And as we shared last week, those discussions will begin on Zoom this week. And you're all invited. So this Monday at 6:30 p.m, for no longer than about an hour, we would love to hear from you and allow you to join in the discussion. A link to this session will be posted on social media and will be emailed to those subscribed to our church emailing list. This discussion will be started by our pastors, but everyone will be organised into breakout rooms without the pastors, where you can share your thoughts and how we can respond to this what now moment and move forward as a church. So remember, this discussion is on Monday at 6:30 p.m. I want to shift gears for you now for a moment and let you know that College Church is here to support you. This is a tough time for so many people, and if that's you, we want to be of service to you. If it's someone that you might know, we want to be of service to them. If you know someone who needs food or a pastoral visit or anything like that, please go to collegechurch.info and click on the Care tab. Alternatively, if you are in a position where you are able to help someone in need at the moment, the best way for you to do that is to donate non-perishable foods or money so our volunteers can distribute these as the needs arise. Now, to do that, please get in touch with Brad Magus or contact College Church through collegechurch.info. While we're on the topic of giving, right now is your time to give back by way of offerings. Each week, an offering is collected that goes to a specific cause. This week's offering will go to Feed the House. What that means is every dollar you give goes directly to College Church to allow us to do what we do and minister to our community and beyond. To give to this week's offering, you can head over to egiving.org.au, select Avondale College Church, and there you can give to this week's offering or you can return tithe. Another way to give is going directly to collegechurch.info and click on the Give tab. Here is where you can choose to give through PayPal or direct deposit. If you give this way and are wishing to return tithe, just let us know in the payment description to ensure that your giving goes to the right place. Church, I want to thank you for your generosity and faithfulness through this time. Your giving each week seriously helps our church as we seek to be the hands and feet of Jesus. With all that said, it's now come time for us to pray together over all that we've been doing.
Please bow your heads for prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for another Sabbath that we can come and worship you. Thank you for our church, friends and family, your love for us and your many blessings. Thank you for the offerings that are collected. Please bless these offerings and help it do your work.
Thank you for everything you have given us. And thank you for our good health and strong bodies. But Jesus, there are many people who are sick or not feeling well. Please be close to them, heal them, and let them know you are with them. Please be with every person here today. And thank you that we can worship you. We love you, Jesus, and thank you for always being with us.
As we come to the end of another week, we are so grateful that we can spend time with you as a church family. But there are so many people in this world who are hurting and feeling scared. Communities are angry and fearful. Please be with these communities and comfort them. Please also be with our world leaders and give them wisdom to make good decisions. Thank you for the peace that we have and that we can worship you freely. Please be with our church leaders and also be with our speaker today. Please open our hearts to your message. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
We're going to introduce a new song this morning. You would have seen our team post on social media a pre-recorded version of this song, Champion. I think it's a timely song. So just lean in, learn the words with us, and just sing. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve, and you took the broken things and raised them to glory. 'Cause you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Now I can finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving cease. This is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Out of the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadow of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. We sing hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. That sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began
Good morning and welcome again to College Church Online. My name is Goodall and it's my privilege to share a message with you this morning. And I want to start off by telling you something that I find incredibly interesting. I like finding different areas that I don't usually know much information about, grabbing onto that area and then going for a deep dive, finding as much information as I can about it, trying to learn everything that I can fit in this head of mine. And one of the things that I've really sort of deep dived in, got a little nerdy on, is an application on iOS. So it's for your iPhone or for your iPad, and it's called Shortcuts. And if you haven't heard of Shortcuts, let me just evangelize you on the good news of what Shortcuts is all about. Essentially, this app has one purpose: to help bring automation to everything that you do. So I'll explain. A lot of what we do every single day on our phones, we do it manually. We unlock our phone and then do a bunch of different things. What Shortcuts aims to do is to automate those bunch of things that you would normally have to do manually and bring it together in a beautiful, wonderful process. So you create these automations, or shortcuts as they're called, on your phone, on your iPad, and they're designed to make your life easier. When this application was first announced, I was pumped. It used to have a different name called Workflow. And then it was bought by Apple and then built in to Apple's iOS software. So I was excited when they released it. And then I went on a pretty big deep dive. Like, I spend a lot of time in this app. And this app is amazing, and I'll explain why I love it just so very much. So you can do everything from, say, for example, you finish work at the end of the day. And when you hop into your car, your phone can then check your calendar automatically for you, see that it's now time for you to travel home, grab the mobile number of your spouse and send them a message automatically to tell them that you are on the way home. That's just one thing that you can do, and I love it. So Cindy gets a message every time that I'm on my way home, and it all happens beautifully and automatically. But then you can take things to the next level. And say, for example, you've got a bunch of different calendar events on your day, a bunch of different tasks to do, and by default, your calendar appointments are in your calendar app, and your reminders or your tasks are in your to-do list manager. And then, for example, say you want to know what the weather is, that's in a separate application too. So all of the things that we do on our phones, they're often in different places. You can use shortcuts to bring those different things all into one thing. So I've created a shortcut where every morning it fires off and it gives me what I've got on my calendar. It's got a list of all my personal tasks to do for the day, all my work tasks that I need to do for the day, and an hour-by-hour weather report. And I love it. See, just something about this application, Shortcuts, it just makes my brain sing. I love it. It's just nerdy, and it's wonderful, and it's automated, and I think it's beautiful. But there was this one shortcut in particular that I was trying to get my head around. And you see, like a normal person, or a more typical person, may play phone games, sit down on the couch, relax, or try and fill in time by playing a little game on their phone. That was never me. Phone games never really worked for me. I will instead prefer to sit down and play around with this Shortcuts app. So this one evening, I was trying to play with Shortcuts and trying to get it to do something in particular. See, I can very easily with Shortcuts grab like an hour-by-hour weather forecast. So I know roughly at like 2 p.m. this afternoon what's going to happen. But the thing is all that information was just like written text. It was all just displayed on my screen as written information. And that's cool, but I wanted to know if there was a way to be able to visualize that information. Because that just, one, looks cool, and two, that's just how my brain works. I much prefer to see something represented in a visual way. But creating graphs and charts in Shortcuts is not something that it can do or do very easily until I hunted and found an app that was an answer to my prayers. And this app was called Charty, and it literally does one thing and one thing only. It enables you to make graphs, to draw charts in Shortcuts, and it was perfect. So I installed the app, and after, to be honest, a few hours of learning and playing around, I finally was able to do it, where I could run my shortcut, and not only would it get all of the written information, hour-by-hour shortcuts, but then it would display it as a graph, and it was awesome. So now I can visually see a bit of an overview of my day. I tried to explain all of this to Pastor Alex, and he didn't care at all and thought it was a little pointless. And I was pretty disappointed that our lead pastor wouldn't show passion and love and care for an area of interest that I have. But you are different. I know this. So anyway, I made this shortcut, and it was incredible because I had this idea of what I wanted to be able to do, and then I could make it. And it was so cool, and I felt so excited about it. So I showed Alex, I showed Nim, I showed Cindy, my wife. I went through the process of showing how this thing worked, and I loved it. And then the next day I went to run the shortcut for real. It was in the morning. I'd woken up, and now I wanted to see what my day would look like. But most importantly, I wanted to know what the weather was going to do. And I wanted that information visualized in a graph. So I opened my phone, press play to start the shortcut, and everything starts running and it's beautiful. And then it runs into an error. It doesn't display the charts. So I run it again, another error. Long story short, the app had a catastrophic failure. It broke, and every time I opened it, it would just crash the app. And then what was cool too is not only did it break my Charty app, it also broke my Shortcuts app. So then anytime I tried to run this shortcut, the whole thing would just, it would die, it would crash, it would fail. So I had to uninstall all my shortcuts, had to uninstall the app Charty, reinstall everything, praise the Lord for backups, and then only after a massive process that took another couple of hours was I able to get it back up and running again. But it was so frustrating. This thing that I'd spent all my time with let me down at the moment that I needed it most. Why do I tell you that? Why do we start a sermon talking about a shortcut? Because in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't the most important thing to be talking about right now, especially with everything that's going on all around us. It really isn't that important. But the reason I bring it up is because it taps into an emotion that we all know. And it's an experience that we've all gone through. That moment when the thing that you've put your hope in, that thing that you've put your trust in, it lets you down and fills you with pain. And whether it's a system or it's a person where you put your hope and you put your trust in an individual and they let you down, that feeling that leaves you with, it's heartbreaking. And if you haven't experienced it yet, unfortunately, life is probably going to deal you that card where you will be let down by somebody who you put your hope and your trust in. And that feeling that you get left with, that emptiness, that not even rage or disappointment, but a combination of the two mixed with a little bit of hollowness and just, that feeling that happens when the person that you put your hope and trust in lets you down. That's what we're going to be talking about this morning. We're going to be speaking into that and what that has to do with a what now moment. Because we're in the second part of our new sermon series called What Now? And we're basically spending the next few weeks looking through various Bible characters, both individuals and groups of characters, and seeing how they respond to their what now moments. We're seeing what they do, how they act, how they respond, and then what lesson that has for us today. Because that's one of the most incredible things about this book, the Bible. It's an ancient book. And the age gap between when these stories were written and us now in 2020 is such a huge gap. But the power of this book, the power of this ancient text is, even though it is just that, an ancient text, it has such beautiful transferable principles that speak life and hope to us today. So we're going to open this book and we're going to see what these ancient stories have for us today and how they can help us when we face our what now moments. But we're going to start off in the Bible book of Matthew. And if you're new to the Bible, the second section of the Bible is called the New Testament. And the first four books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they each speak into the life of Jesus. And they each come at it from a slightly different perspective, as humans do. We tell the same story, but slightly differently. Some put more detail in, others remove detail. Some focus on one thing, whereas others might completely miss it. But these four stories, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they tell the story of Jesus. And this morning, we're going to look in Matthew chapter 26. And if you've got your Bible and you're an old pro at flipping to Bible text, why don't you grab your Bible and follow along? But if not, the Bible text will be up on the screen so you can follow along too. So here we go. Got it right here. The book of Matthew, chapter 26. And we're going to start in verse 31, and it goes like this. On the way, Jesus told them, "Tonight, all of you will desert me. For the scriptures say God will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there." All right, let's stop there. There's a bunch of things that are going on in this passage, so much so that we could spend all our time just looking at these few verses. But instead of deep diving here, we're going to just do a brief overview. This text finds itself after a pretty big event that happened just previously. See, the few verses before, we find ourselves reading about a story where Jesus and his gatherers come close. And the ones that he was really pouring into, the people that Jesus was really mentoring and training and pouring into, his closest followers were referred to as the disciples, 12 disciples. And he's meeting with them in this room and they're eating together and they're sharing, and Jesus is telling them a bunch of information. And this evening, there's so much in it, and it's really big in Christianity. It's referred to as the Last Supper. And again, we could spend a lot of time unpacking that. But The context to our verse this morning in Matthew chapter 26, verse 31 and 32, these verses happen after they have finished this celebration or this Last Supper together, this time of reflection and pain and celebration. Yes, but there were some big things were discussed at this dinner. One such thing, Jesus says that somebody around in this room would betray Jesus. And of course, when the disciples heard this, they pushed back and went, no one, we wouldn't do that. But of course, Jesus says, no, one of you will. Anyway, that's the background to these verses here. So it says, on the way, Jesus told them, just after this previously heavy meal, right? He says, tonight all of you will desert me. If things were already not intense enough, now Jesus tells the people that now not just one of you will betray me, but you will all desert me, and it's going to happen tonight. For the scriptures say, God will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there. What Jesus does is gives a lot of information to his followers. Like, it's a lot. But the good thing is it's really clear. He gives a lot of information that's so much for them to process, but it's clear. And three things he essentially tells them. Number one, Jesus was going to be taken and killed. Number two, all of Jesus' closest followers would desert him. And then number three, after Jesus' death, he would come back to life and travel to Galilee and meet up with his followers again. So Jesus gives them this incredible amount of information that's so much to digest, but he gives it to them in a crystal clear way. I'm going to be taken and killed. You're all going to leave me, but after I have died, I'm going to come back to life and I'm going to meet you in Galilee. So those three major points he tells the disciples in a really crystal clear way. And the thing is, this is not the first time that Jesus has started to speak about this. In fact, Jesus has been preparing his followers, his disciples, for this moment, for essentially his whole ministry, the whole time that he's spent with them. Sometimes he'll be like this in our passage in Matthew chapter 26, and he'll be crystal clear and he'll lay out the information. Other times, he'll be more cryptic, like in the book of John chapter 2, in verse 19, and it says, "All right," Jesus replied, "destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." "What?" they exclaimed. "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you can rebuild it in 3 days." But when Jesus said this temple, he meant his own body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered he had said this, and they believed both what the scriptures and what Jesus had said. See, at times, Jesus speaks in a bit of a cryptic way that only hindsight, when they look back on this story, they're like, now we understand what Jesus was talking about. Sometimes he speaks cryptically and it's easy to miss, but the keen listener will be able to pick up on it. But other times, he pulls from Matthew chapter 26 and lays it out clear. I'm going to be killed. You're all going to leave me, but don't worry, I'm going to come back to you. We're going to find you. We're going to move forward. It's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. So Jesus maps it out and tells the disciples really clearly. But of course, when the disciples hear this information, they push back against it and they reject it because their understanding of who Jesus is, their understanding of what Jesus is about, what his mission is, everything he stands for, that does not line up with the information that Jesus has just told them. Jesus just told them that he's going to be taken and killed and that they're all going to desert him. That does not line up with the experience of the disciples and what they understand their life to be, how they understand Jesus to be. So they push back in verse 33. And it says, Peter declared, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I will never desert you." Very nice, Peter. Throw the other disciples under the bus, but you're the hero. Good job. Obviously, he's going through some things, right? He's stressed. The things that Jesus say are so far outside what he thinks and believes about Jesus and the situation that they're in. So Peter declared, "Even if everybody else deserts you, I will never desert you." Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth, Peter, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me." "No," Peter insisted. "Even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." And all the other disciples vowed the same. Their vision of who Jesus was, what Jesus was about, how he would face a situation like this was not lining up with the words of what Jesus was saying. Even their own views about themselves didn't line up with the thing that Jesus was saying. Jesus was waving a red flag, trying to get them to understand that, hey, something big is about to happen. Everything is about to be changed. Get ready, but don't worry because I'm in it with you. I'm still going to be there. I'm going to come back. This death is not going to be the end, so you don't have to worry because I'm telling you what's going to happen so you can be prepared. But the disciples are so caught up in their own preconceived ideas of how everything is meant to roll out that they are unable to hear the thing that Jesus has to say to them. So they push back and say it can't be true, and they all vow that they will not deny Jesus. But then we see verse 47 in Matthew chapter 26. And it says, and even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. Then come down to verse 55. Then Jesus said to the crowd, am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. And then this is the verse that stings. At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. And the Bible book of Mark makes it really clear in verse 50 when it says, then all the disciples deserted him and ran away. Everything that Jesus had said to the people was now coming true. And even though they were adamant that they wouldn't leave him, the power of a what now moment is it often throws you for a loop and you react in a way that you didn't expect you would. And one minute the disciples are telling Jesus, no, we're not going to desert you. We're not going to leave you. We're going to have your back. We're going to be there with you. But then when the rubber hits the road and Jesus is arrested and taken away, the disciples drop everything and they run away. They desert him even after telling Jesus that they wouldn't do it. They desert him because their what now moment hit them like a freight train. Everything they believed about Jesus, this one who had come to save them, this one who was leading them in a different way, this one that was teaching in a different way, this one who changed the game, who changed their lives, was going to keep changing lives and keep changing the game. The vision that they had for what Jesus would do and where Jesus would go did not line up with what was happening. So they dropped everything and left because their preconceived ideas of how things were meant to happen blinded them to the reality that was right in front of them. So they leave and they desert Jesus. These are Jesus' closest followers. They just left him. But that's the thing, isn't it? Because when the person or people or system or whatever, but when the people that you put your hope in, when the people that you put your trust in, when you have a clear idea of how this situation is meant to work, when it doesn't go to plan, when somebody lets you down or does something that you didn't expect that fills you with a pain and often pushes you to react in a way that you wouldn't typically do. And what we find ourselves is the disciples are so caught up with how they think this thing is going to go. They do the human thing and predict and project and run a narrative in their mind of how all of this is going to happen. And the minute that it doesn't line up with their own ideas, they can't do anything but to freeze. Their what now moment hits them like a freight train and they find themselves defaulting so fast. It's not even funny. And they default to that natural human emotion of fear, freak out, I'm going to run away. And Jesus' closest disciples did this. And we see in the book of John chapter 20, verse 19, when Jesus does eventually do the thing that he said he will do and find them and reappear to them. Look in verse 19 in John 20. It says that Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, he says. That Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. They were Jesus' closest followers. Jesus had spent his entire ministry with them, preparing them for this moment, telling them in some ways, cryptically, yes, but in other times, like the night that he was arrested, he tells them clear and crystal what's going to happen. So you essentially do not need to fear, trust me. But they've removed themselves and they're hiding away because they're afraid of the Jewish leaders. The what now moment that the disciples faced hit them like a freight train and they defaulted so fast. And the thing that they defaulted to is that natural human emotion of fear. And you see, their fear disengaged them from positive momentum. Can you imagine if the disciples did the opposite? Where instead of defaulting to fear and running away, imagine if they stood their ground because they knew who Jesus was and they trusted the words that Jesus said. And imagine if they stuck around and even when Jesus was on trial and he was eventually killed, if they stood strong and said, yeah, you've taken him, You've killed him, but this is not the end. He's going to come back. Imagine the power that would come from that when Jesus does then reappear to people and says, yes, I am indeed back. Imagine the power that would come from that. Imagine the positive momentum that would come from that. But unfortunately, the fear of the disciples disengaged them from positive momentum, and they froze. See, even Jesus' closest followers were not there in Jesus' greatest moment of pain. And we see in the Bible books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it tells the story of Jesus at the cross. Take, for example, the book of Luke, chapter 23, verse 48. It says, when all the crowds that came to see the crucifixion saw what had happened, they went home in deep sorrow. But Jesus' friends, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching. Book of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 55 says, and many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him were watching from a distance. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee. See, the Bible paints this picture that those that were there in Jesus' greatest moment of pain, where he is hanging on the cross, were not the 12 followers, were not the 12 disciples. They were not the community that he had poured himself into. No, instead, they were many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him, and they were watching at a distance. Those closest to Jesus in his greatest time of pain were not his greatest followers, as you would think. His greatest followers left, were hiding out. In this case, the greatest followers was this group of women that came from Galilee to care for Jesus. They stuck with Jesus. His disciples, they were nowhere to be seen. The only version of this Bible story that's slightly different is the book of John, where in verse 19, verse 25 to 27, he tells the story and he says, when Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, dear woman, here is your son. See, John refers to that there was a disciple, simply referred to the disciple he loved, that this individual was there. And there's a lot of contention around who this individual is. Some say it was John himself. Others argue to go, well, if the other versions of the Bible say that none of the disciples were there, is this story the fullest story where one other disciple was there? You know what? Even if one of the disciples, 1 out of 12, were near Jesus, standing at the cross when he was being killed, that's not a great turnout from the group that you'd poured your life into. They go from following Jesus, giving up their lives to follow after him, to just completely walking away. And that's the power of fear. That's the power of defaulting in a what now moment, is it cripples you. The default cripples you. And the what now moment can force you to act in a way that you may not have originally intended for yourself, and you react in a way that's different. What now moments can come as a shock. That's part of the goodness that they bring, and we're getting to that in a minute. But a what now moment, if you default to the natural human reaction of fear, it can disengage you from positive momentum. This is what we find with the disciples, those closest to Jesus. They disengage from positive momentum because the fear that comes from defaulting in their what now moment froze them in place. See, a what now moment essentially brings you two choices, and we see this in the disciples. Option number one, you can default to the natural human thing of fear and confusion, then run and hide. Or you can lean into the what now moment, wrestling with what forging a new path could look like. But that's not easy work. And we see that in the disciples. These were Jesus' closest followers, the ones he poured into. And even they were unable to wrestle with their not what now moment and forge a new path forward. They defaulted because their preconceived ideas of how things were going to work blinded them to the wrestle that a what now moment brings. They were blind to it. So there's lessons that we can learn from this. Number one, we must not allow our preconceived ideas to blind us to the reality of what God is doing. Number one, we must not let our preconceived ideas blind us to what God is doing. Number two, what now moments come as an awakening. See, even though Jesus presented a what now moment to the disciples beforehand, saying to them, hey, tonight I'm going to get arrested and I'm eventually going to be killed, but don't worry because I'm coming back. He sets them up to prepare them for this. But still, this what now moment of Jesus being taken and eventually kills hits the disciples like a freight train. And that's the power of a what now moment, is it presents a moment of an awakening. It flags a big red flag to go, okay, Things aren't working out the way that I thought they did, but now I have an opportunity. Because point number 3, what now moments are an invitation. And specifically, what now moments are an invitation to courage. They're an invitation to not simply be overwhelmed by the situation that presents itself to you, but pay attention to the fact that, this what now moment has come at a time where I didn't think it would. It's brought about a reaction that I didn't think could come. And it's changed the game like I didn't think it would. But now I have a choice. I've been presented with an invitation. Will I do the natural human thing and default to fear and default back to the known? Or will I do the thing that God is calling his followers to do and wrestle with the what now moment and ask the question of God and ourselves, what would forging a new path forward look like? Because what now moments are perfect disruptors. They disrupt our lives. They disrupt the mundane. They disrupt us thinking that we are the king of our lives and able to project and predict everything. What now moments often come like a freight train, not to scare us, not to shut us down, but they can be used as an awakening to be like, hey, remember, you're not actually God. There is a bigger person in play here. God is wanting to give you an opportunity and present with you an invitation. Because last week, Pastor Alex shared that God doesn't cause our what now moments, doesn't cause the pain in our lives, doesn't cause the destruction in our lives, but he will most certainly take the negative things that are thrown into our lives and he will shape it for purpose and use it to grow us. And that's what God does with what now moments. See, what now moments and the invitation that brings is God shaping work in motion. God presents and says, okay, here's your what now moment. Here is your invitation to courage. Will you default to fear, which is the natural human thing? It's the very thing that the disciples did. Or will you lean into courage? Take hold of courage. And this courage doesn't come from a bravery or any power within ourselves. It comes from the reality of knowing that God is with us. Like Jesus says to the disciples, don't worry, I'm going to die, but I'm going to come back. I'm with you through it. You are not on your own. That understanding brings its own special kind of courage to know that I do not stand alone. And it's really easy to feel like we're on our own. Even right now, I'm in this room on my own, but I'm not really. Because God is present. And God is with me, and God is by my side. And regardless of the what now moments that hit me like a freight train, I am not on my own because God stands beside me, and God uses these moments to shape for purpose. And that's a beautiful thing, because the big idea, like we've said this morning, is what now moments are an invitation to courage. See, we are invited to look at what's in front of us. We're invited to look at the what now moment that is presented to us and ask questions of it, to wrestle with it. Because when we ask questions of our what now moment and we then take those questions and shape a plan for action, that's what forging a new path can look like. So check this out. We're invited to look at what's in front of us, asking the questions. Number 1, what can I learn from even this? That it's easy to learn from positive experiences, but in even this, what can I learn? Number 2, what am I being called to pick up? Is there something new that I'm being invited into with this new what now moment? Does it scare me? Does it freak me out? But am I being invited to pick it up anyway? Or number 3, what am I being called to put down? Maybe I've been carrying something for far too long, doing something, being involved in something that now God is calling me to put down. And this what now moment is an invitation to embrace that. So when we ask these questions, what can I learn from even this? What am I being called to pick up? And what am I being called to put down? When we wrestle with these questions, that is what it looks like to forge a new path forwards. Because the easy thing to do and the natural thing to do is to default to fear and to freeze and to go back to the known and how we've always done things. But what now moments are an invitation to courage. It's an opportunity to wrestle. And that's core to what it means to be a follower of God. The people of God in the Old Testament were referred to as the people of Israel. That name, Israel, means to wrestle. The people of God were known as wrestlers, not in terms of like pro wrestling and all that sort of foolishness, but wrestlers with what's in front of them, wrestling with God and not allowing the default to just kick in. Because God is in the business of taking what now moments, bringing about an invitation to courage, and then absolutely changing the game because of the wrestle. Think about what happened to the church. If you're familiar with the Bible and you're familiar with these stories, before the life of Jesus here on earth, spirituality and following God looked like one thing. But after the game was changed, what now moments change the game if we can have the courage to wrestle. And that courage doesn't come from ourselves. It comes from knowing that God is with us and God is calling us and inviting us to say, what can we learn from even this? What am I called to pick up? And what am I called to put down? As we wrap up this morning, last year, I had a what now moment that hit me like a freight train. I was working as a local church pastor and I loved that job. I really enjoyed it. I had the benefit of working in a campus church. So you have this beautiful work of like, you're a pastor, yes, but then you work directly with the chaplains and there's this beautiful marriage between we're actually communicating on a day-to-day basis with people who are not familiar with the God story, the Jesus story. Because the people that come to our schools, it's such a beautiful thing that most of them, they are coming into our setting, but they don't know the story of God. And we get the beautiful privilege of being able to show them what that looks like with a lived experience. And I loved that role. And the thing is at the position where I worked, we made the choice when I first got that role to not move houses because Cindy, my wife's work is here. We built our house here in Kurumbong. We had planted our lives here. So I would do the commute. And it was only 45 minutes, but I would commute down and back every single day. And it was fine for the first year and a bit. But then after a while, when you lose an hour and a half, just in travel time out of your day, like it has a cost. And some of you do that. Some of you do even more commuting every single day. And that's cool. That works for you. But it wasn't working for me and it wasn't working for my family because I had to leave before like my family was really up and engaged in the day. And then often I would come back and even miss my son who would then, he would go to bed sometimes before I would even get back home. And that broke my heart. Because I found a what now moment that was just thrust on me and it really did hit me like a freight train. Because I was doing work that I loved, was passionate about, and I enjoyed it, but it was coming at the cost of my family. I was missing out. And my wife is incredible and she held the fort down and never made me feel bad. Never made me feel bad. And that was an incredible gift. But I felt it and I could see that I was missing out. I wasn't able to be present. And then when I was home, I was so exhausted and brain fatigued that I wasn't really present. You know those moments, right? Where you're just kind of sitting down, you're just zoned out and you're not present. To me, I was hit with a what now moment. What was I going to do? Because we had a choice to make. Would we either move everything from where we live here in Kurumbong and just shift down to the coast, which means that Cindy would need to give up her job, we'd need to give up our house, which we really love, and we would have to start something fresh down there on the coast. Knowing that, we were in the hands of the conference, so we might have even been asked to move soon after, right? And then we would have made that massive move and then have to move again. Or would I do something new and do something different? Because my family had given up a lot for me. They were putting sacrifices in on the daily. So was I going to keep doing that? Was I going to ask them to sacrifice again and move with me down to the coast? Were we going to disrupt everything? Or was I being called to something new? And it was in that wrestle where the job that I have now came up, to be the chaplain here at Avondale University College. And then I was stuck, right? What would I do? Would I try my hands at something new, something that was scary to me, something where I wasn't sure if I would measure up, I wasn't sure if I would deliver? Would I step out and do that new thing? But I would be here, I would be close, I would be 5 minutes from my house, I could be present with my family. Would I do that? Or would I default and stay with what was known, the thing that I was enjoying and that was working for me, but did have its costs? What would I do? Would I default to what was known, or would I wrestle with the questions and forge a new future? And I'm so glad that my family and I decided to step out into something new. And yeah, we left the thing that we loved. I loved that church. It was brilliant. It filled me with goodness. And then I stepped into this new role of being a chaplain. And it was an incredibly overwhelming experience, and it still is in a big way. But it is filling me with fulfillment and joy in a way that I never thought possible. I love my work. And what's even better is that now my family aren't sacrificing for me. I am here. I am present. And now I'm 5 minutes from home. I ride my bike, which is an electric bike, but it's a commuting bike. It's all good. I enjoy it. Do have a road bike too, but that's just for fun and on the sides. But when we ride to work, it's on the electric bike. Don't at me. It's fine. I can ride my bike to work and then be home. I can go home for lunch if I want to. I can pick up my son from preschool if I want to. I was hit with this what now moment of what to do, and I wasn't sure, and I wrestled and I stepped out not knowing, but God was with it and used that to shape things for purpose. And now I see the fruits of that. Didn't see it in the moment. It's very scary and very nerve-wracking. But now I see the fruits and I know that my God is with me, right? Because that's the power of a what now moment. It's so easy to default to the known and what we've always done before. But what now moments bring with them an invitation. And if we don't wrestle with that invitation, if we don't wrestle with the invitation to courage, if we don't wrestle with the questions that we spoke about this morning, we really can miss the goodness that God has for us. So I want to encourage you. What are the what now moments in your life? What are you being invited to have courage about? What are you being called to learn from even this? What are you being called to pick up? And what might you be called to put down? What are the what now moments in your life? May you have the courage to wrestle with them. And may that courage not come from yourself, but come from the knowledge of knowing that God is with you. But then on a bigger scale as a church, what are the what now moments in our lives? Big one is COVID-19. And now very soon, hopefully over the next few weeks or months, being able to come back together as a formal community. Will we default back to the known and everything that we've done before? Or will we wrestle with the questions that are being put before us? Will we wrestle with an invitation to courage? And will we ask the question, what are we called to learn from even this? What are we called to pick up? And what are we called to put down? Because if we have the courage to wrestle with that, it is my firm belief that God will do what God does and God will bless that process. Because it's so easy to default back to the known, but we have an opportunity to look at what we do and not be different for different's sake, right? Because if we're just being different for the sake of being different, there's no purpose to that. We can do that, but why be different for the sake of being different? It needs to be driven by purpose. And that's what this process is all about, wrestling with finding out what it is that God is calling us to. Because the church was revolutionized when Jesus came on earth and did his public ministry. And the church was never the same again. Maybe now we're being invited to step into a new season where our church is never the same, but we're able to engage with people like never before. What is God calling us to? What can we learn from even this? What are we called to pick up? And what are we being called to put down? What now moments? They do seem scary and overwhelming, but we don't have to be scared by what now moments because we're not on our own. God is with us. God is present and God is by our side. May you have the courage to wrestle. May you have the courage to lean in to the invitation of courage and lean away from the natural human reaction of defaulting to the known. And let's embrace this next season. Hey, let's pray together. God, sometimes it's really frustrating to experience the what now moments that come flying into our lives, but I'm so thankful that you use those moments and you shape them for purpose and you use them to grow us. You actually bring them about as an invitation to courage, to wrestle with what forging a new path could look like. So may we do that. May we be able to do that in our own lives and as a church as a whole. And may we know that we are guided by you and that your presence is with us. We thank you. In the precious name of Jesus, amen.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't turn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, finds till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yeah. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you join us again in the future. Just remember that Monday night at 6:30 p.m, we'll be hosting breakout groups on Zoom. The purpose of this is to come together as a church and try to figure out what now for College Church. And we want to hear your voice, so please be part of that. You'll be able to find the link for this discussion on our social media platforms or via email if you're subscribed to the church mailing list. As we close, something we say at the end of every church service is this: as you go into your mission field, which is your network of relationships, know that you are making disciples with the presence and the power of Jesus. In your mission field, in your network of relationships, go and make a difference. Bring joy, bring life, and always be kind. See you next week.